Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Erica.
And today we're going to show you in a three-part series the Hugs and Kisses Baby Quilt that we have behind us here. It's just gorgeous.
And this is one of my favorite patterns that we have. I think it's really cute, Lynn.
It is neat. The designer did this with Michael Miller fabrics, and there are 3 different blocks in here, and we are going to start in this first video with the O shape, which is this one right here.
Okay. And they are all made with the 8-inch cube.
Yes. So that's great. So with your 8-inch cube, you are going to need dies 5, 6, and 8.
Right, and if you wanted to make your block smaller or larger, you could use a different size cube. And the beauty of working with the cube is that the numbers are going to be the same. So you would be using the same numbers, just end up with different size blocks, either smaller or larger, depending on which one you choose.
That's right. And you can also change up your fabrics with, this pattern, of course, too, and
That's
get a
right.
totally different look as well. So, okay, so let's get started with
Absolutely.
the cutting. All right. What we're going to do today, because we've got 3 dies, we've got kind of our blocks started over here.
Right.
And we've got our finished block here to use as a reference. We are going to we're going to focus on the square and a square
right.
in the center. And so we're going to cut the half square triangles, and we're going to cut the square
center
itself.
square.
And then we also have the rectangles that's part of it, but we're not going to actually cut those today.
Right, we've got those ready to go, so.
Okay, so what we need to finish off this block is the center square, and then we've got also a corner that's not done as well. So I'm going to cut all of the half squares, the little half squares we need, all in one pass.
Perfect.
Okay, so we've got 6 layers here of cotton fabric, and we've got 4 layers of the orange and then 2 layers of the white.
Right, because we do need more of the orange for that center, so that's
right.
great.
So, and I've got this cut on the lengthwise grain as it goes through the cutter. I want to make sure that we've got that, and then I will place my mat on top, and we're using the Go Big cutter.
Right, so we're going to be able to cut 2 dies at the same time.
That's right, woo, that's fun.
But these dies from the 8-inch cube would work in any of our cutters. They would work in the Go Baby as well as the Go or the Go Big that we're using here.
That's
right. You'd only be able to use 1 die at a time in the Baby or the Go.
Right. Yeah, don't try
Don't try this at home. Yeah.
All right, and so with our center square, I'm going to go ahead and cut 6 layers of white squares as well.
And that's almost all that we need for the whole quilt. So we only need 8 for the whole quilt. So really 2 passes with this 1 die and you've got that whole section of cutting done. Really quick and easy.
And I think that's a great point to talk about with the cubes. I mean, you get your dies out that you need. You can cut all the pieces for your whole quilt in just a short amount of time.
And I like to do that. I like to get my fabric out. I like to prep it so that my width of fabric strips are just a little bit bigger than the shapes I'm cutting. Lay them out and just cut everything at the same time.
Okay, here we go. Ready?
All right, ready? Sometimes we do races to see who wins.
All right, so here we've got all those.
Here are all of those great half square triangles for us.
I'm going to turn these all over to you.
Perfect.
Okay, and then.
And I need my center square.
Got just one.
Just one. Go. Okay. Now when I'm doing a square and a square, I like to do sew my opposite sides on first. So I like to do one side, then do the opposite, and then move on and press those open so that I have a nice seam to sew the other sides on. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with that, Lynn.
So you're basically centering it on there.
Basically centering it on there. Our dog-eared corner isn't going to react quite the same with this, but when we press it open, you'll see that it's going to come out just perfect.
Okay, and this is true of all of the square on square combinations for all the different sizes of cubes.
And if I was doing this full quilt, Lynn, I would go ahead and do all of my one side pieces for my center squares. Then I'd go ahead, do all of the other side. Then I'd stop and press them open and move on to the other sides. I like to do a production line when I'm sewing like that.
That seems very efficient. So the best use of your time. But you can still use that dog-eared corner as your seam alliance guide.
Absolutely, it does still give you that. And I'm going to really quickly set that. We are going to press to the dark side here, so we're going to press it up really quick towards that half square triangle. And just roll that up. And again, it may have looked a little odd when we were first starting it, but now that we've got this first side on, you can see how nicely that lies on those edges. Now I'm ready to go ahead and do the other sides. Now that I have these first sides down, they actually give me the guideline so that it'll line up for me. So it's showing me exactly where I'm going with this.
It is pretty amazing how that happens. It's just, it fits right in there after you've got the first two pieces on.
I would have done much better in geometry class as a child if they'd caught me with quilting, I think, Lynn. Okay. And then we're just gonna pop that last one on because I like to have things finished.
Okay, and then I'm gonna get your next.
If you want to get those ready for me,
Right.
then we'll be ready and we'll have this ready to finish off. And it is a good idea, as much as I like to produce mass quantities, it is a good idea to do a sample block first. Cut and sew one together just to make sure it works together the way that you think it's going to. Sometimes we learn from things as we go along the way. I like to say that I'm not the best at reading directions, and every once in a while I can
press that.
quilt myself into a corner. So having that sample block is a great thing to do. But once I've got that down, then I'd be doing all of my little half squares at the same time so that we'd have those ready to go.
Okay, so there's that.
Perfect. So this is going to lay right in there, and then we'd be ready to go ahead, sew our rectangles onto either side of this one to make that center row. Take and add our half square triangle unit down to the bottom. Press those all open, we'd be ready to go ahead and put that block together. Really quick and easy. And really, Lynn, this is a great shape. This little hug or O shape shows up in a lot of different quilt patterns that I've seen. So this is a great basic way to make that shape.
Right, it's a really great block to learn how to cut and sew because, yeah, absolutely, you can use it with other quilts. Well, this is wonderful. You can find this pattern at AccuQuilt.com.
That's right, and more inspiration, more patterns even, not only at AccuQuilt.com, but on Pinterest, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Right, and now stay tuned. We're going to have two more segments here where we're going to show you a couple of other.
We've got hearts and kisses yet to come.
Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Erica.
And here we are, we're back with segment 2 with our Hugs and Kisses baby quilt.
And we're going to make the heart block this time.
That's right. Okay, so we'll just get started.
Okay, and we are using the 8-inch cube.
Right.
And we've got the dies that we need already pulled out from that cube, Lynn.
Right, we've got die 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Perfect.
That's what you're going to need. And okay, so what we've done is we've got one complete block here put together.
Right.
And then we are going to focus on the flying geese.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
And so we've got, this is, number 1 is our large square, and then number 2, these are our smaller squares. So
okay, so these are the solid squares that
right.
we see. Okay,
we've already got those cut. So we are going to cut the larger quarter squares and the smaller half squares.
And that's going to be what we need both for our flying geese here, but also what we use for the sides of the heart over here.
That's correct. Okay, right. With the smaller half square triangles, we're going to cut 6 layers, but we're going to do 4 layers of the white and then 2 layers of the pink because we need more white half squares with this block than the pink. So still up to 6 layers, and I do of course have my fabric is cut on the lengthwise grain.
Lengthwise grain, perfect.
Okay, and then on our larger quarter squares, so we need 3 of those with this block.
Right.
But I'm going to go ahead. I've got a width of fabric strip here that's cut on the lengthwise grain.
Okay.
So I'm just going to cut. There are 4 quarter square triangles, so I'm just going to go ahead and cut enough for other blocks or other heart blocks in the quilt top.
Why not save more time?
Right, okay. So rather than stop and cut individual, we'll get the most out of this.
I think that's an excellent idea.
All right, and we've got the go big, so we can cut
both at the same time.
Okay.
And again, this could be done with this 8-inch cube with any of our cutters. We could use the Go Baby or the Go as well.
Right, and then also you could make this quilt top with any of the sizes of cubes as well. You would just adapt, use the same die numbers, but just you'll adapt the finished size of the blocks.
Perfect.
All right, so Let me slide this one off too.
Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put together one of the flying geese. This is going to be the one that's going to be the tip of the heart.
Okay, so I'll give you that and two
Okay.
of the white.
And typically, Lynn, I would go ahead and chain piece. So I just get started. I would go ahead and do all of my one side, then take them all to the iron and press them out, and then I'd go ahead and do the other side. But we're just doing one right now, so.
Okay, so one thing I want to point out here on these quarter squares do still have one of their dog ears on them. So just a little tip while Erica's finishing up there. When you put your half square on, this side will match up perfectly with your dog ear cut off. This side, you're going to have a little tip hanging out, and that's perfectly fine. It'll be easier if you start sewing from this side. So just a little tip there. Okay,
so
you've got your other
got
white.
that done. And again, I'm going to line it up. I'm going to use this end because I know that's going to be perfect. And then by the time once I have the one side off, you can see that now it will fit just perfectly up there for me.
I think that that's just still, again, one of the greatest things about the AccuQuilt system.
Oh,
with
absolutely. Such a good time saver. Not only are you saving that time on cutting originally and having the accuracy, but you're saving time all along the way with that as well.
Right.
Now we're going to go ahead and press this out, and again, I'm pressing them both towards the dark, or our pattern that is the tip of the heart. And I do, when I'm making my flying geese, like to go in the same order with my sides.
And that makes sense.
Okay, so that makes our little heart tip. Now over here, we already put together this side of the center panel. Over here, I would put these two half square triangles together and put those two sides together to make this rectangular big shape. And then go ahead, sew this to either side of that center square to make that center row. We'd sew together our two flying geese units up here, and then we go down here, sew our squares to either side of that flying geese unit, press that all, and then sew those 3 rows together.
That sounds great. It looks like a little bit complicated over here, but I think once you break it down, it's all easy piecing.
Okay, so when you look at our sample here, you may think that our heart looks a little fat, Lynn, but because we engineer that 1/4 inch seam allowance into all of our dies, when this block is sewn into our project with that 1/4 inch seam allowance, it's going to square that off just where you think it should be. It'll come right across these points and also across the tips of the hearts here with our 1/4 inch seam allowance, as well as the bottom, to give you that great heart shape that we see in our quilt behind us.
Right, so then you've got your perfect points, which is what you want.
Right, as well as that cute heart. So.
All right, well, stay tuned for segment number 3, where we do what we're calling the Kisses block.
That's right, or the X.
And this is the 3rd segment in our series on our Hugs and Kisses wall hanging baby quilt behind us.
Yes.
And this segment we're going to do, this is the traditional block called the red and white cross.
Right.
But we're calling it our Kisses block. All right, so should we just get started with this?
Let's just get started. Let's just jump right in, because this is the most challenging block of all of 3 of them.
Yes.
So let's just jump in.
All right, so again, we're using our 8-inch cube, and the dies we need are the 5 and the 7.
Right.
All right, so we've got the challenging parallelogram.
That's right.
All right, and then half square triangles. So what we're going to cut, we've got a complete block here.
Right.
We're going to work on this one that we're still putting together. And we are going to cut 6 layers of the white on the half square triangle.
And that's going to give us all the white half squares that we need to finish one block in this. We've got 8 of these kiss blocks in our quilt.
That's right. And then I'm going to show you a little trick with the parallelograms.
Perfect.
For fabric savings. And also, you want to keep in mind, you can see here that the parallelograms, they need to be right sides together so that we've got them facing in the right way.
So that we've got those mirror images.
Right. So want to make sure, again, that your fabric strips are facing together. Now what I've done here is I cut this on the lengthwise grain, so if I had my salvage, it would be running down here.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to show you why. So set your die on your cutter, and then you're just going to layer your strips this way so that your length of strip is running this way.
Right, because you always want your lengthwise grain going lengthwise through your cutter.
Right. Okay, so then we've got the Go Big cutter, so we can run these through at the same time.
Okay, perfect.
And we're going to make 2 cuts this
Right.
time. All right, so here we've got all of our white.
We've got all of our white that we need.
squares.
So we've done all of those white for 1 square and 1 pass, which is great.
There you go. And then before I talk about this, we do need 4 green half squares.
Right, so that's going to be 2 layers then.
Okay, so that'll be my second cut. And then with our parallelogram, so here we've got these are our right sides together.
Okay,
There you go.
perfect. Thank you.
So then for fabric savings, see what I'm doing? I'm just shifting this over. So then what I can do is just line that up, that angle
Right.
there. And then that's going to cause me to
It's a
save.
great tip. It's going to save you a lot of fabric. And you can go ahead, you could trim those edges off the front, or you can just be careful when you feed it through.
Right, and then that's what we're going to do.
We know Lynn's
this
going to be
time.
careful, so we're going to trust her.
Get this one started, and then I'm going to run that one through same time.
Perfect.
Okay, and then we slide that off, and there you can see where we've taken that. We've got more
That's
parallelograms.
right, we've got
But-
more parallelograms. This
Right.
is our challenge to say, too.
But there's your fabric savings rather than flipping those the other way. So little tip there, and then we've got our green half squares all cut perfectly.
Right.
Oops.
So the first thing we would do then, we'd need to do 2 pieces to put together this first section of our cross. And we would go ahead and do our half square triangles, do the green and the white there, and I actually have one already sewn together. So that would be that tip. So that's going to form that corner up there. Then we're going to take our parallelograms. Now, a really important thing to do, especially with this one, is to have a sample out there to go ahead and sew one through as a test, just to make sure that you're doing it right. And I'm going to keep this as my guide because we found that in working with this, you need to be really sure you're double checking yourself that you're sewing your parallelogram correctly. So we want to be sure we're sewing that way. We do want to sew from the bottom up to the top. Now our assembly on this, Lynn, is going to be what we call a Y seam. And that's a little bit more challenging. So we actually are going to use some more tools because it's a partial seam so that we can fit that all together.
Right, and a lot of quilters are a little bit afraid of Y seams.
A little bit afraid of Y seams. I'm going to mark in a 1/4 inch
Okay, from the
edge. That would be where my seam allowance is. And then I'm going to mark a 1/4 inch up from that point too. So
Okay.
we've got a good 1/4 inch stopping place there for us. And I want to make it kind of big because I want to be able to see it. But I also want to make sure I don't get carried away. So I'm going to take a pin and put it through that dot. And this is just going to help me remember to stop, but it's also going to help it make it a little easier to see that. And again, this is definitely a case where I would say to grab some scrap fabric and do a test sample to practice on if you're not familiar with this technique.
Instead of starting with your...
Instead of just starting with your project fabric, because we hate it when we run out. And again, I've got a clear foot on here, but it's still not the easiest to see. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit. And then it is also important to go ahead and do a back stitch or 2, because you don't want that pulling out. It's going to cause us a problem in the end. Now, hopefully we've got that correct. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take my square, and I've marked my 1/4 inch on my square as well. I want to pull this extra out of the way.
So now are you waiting to press that?
Oh, you know what, Lynn? I think it might be easier. You're right. If I went ahead and pressed this open, let's do that. Let me just set that seam really quickly. And this is one that we're going to press open, and you'll see that in the directions. And it's just going to help it lay a little flatter in the end, especially with this Y-seam technique. Thank you for stopping me.
Oh, well.
So you want to pull it open. You want to take your square, and I want to make sure I don't sew myself into a corner here, but you're going to mark, get those ends marked right together, and then again I'm going to make use of a pin to help me remember to stop sewing and help me see where my mark is.
Okay, so there you're still stopping at a 1/4
So I'm
inch
still
in.
stopping at a 1/4 inch there. Now you're going to see that little tip of the parallelogram up there. That's perfectly normal. That's what's going to happen because it is a true parallelogram and it does not have that tip chopped off like we do our dog-eared corners on our triangles. And you do, of course, want to be careful if you're using a pin like I am, you don't sew your pin in and you don't hit your pin because you don't want to hurt your machine. And you can even pick up your, if you can't see your dot, go ahead, pick up your presser foot and take a look. I can see my dot well enough to know I'm right on it, so I'm going to go ahead and anchor that. It's a little bit more stopping and starting, and then we're going to be able to turn. Again, take this, pull it out of your way. You don't want to have what the nice lady that taught me how to sew would call it a bunchy. So we're going to put that out, pull that out. Again, you can tell where that tip is. You've got that mark. And again, I'm going to put a pin in there to stop myself. I'm going to make sure that I'm lined up. We've got our little tip end there. That's okay. Go back to the sewing machine one last time with this piece. And you'll see I'm sewing a little slowly because I don't want to, kind of like sewing surgery there. Okay, and check it, take a look, see if you're on your point. If you're not, you can always go back in. If you need to go back in and add a stitch, you sure can. And we're going to pull that out.
Well,
I think we did pretty well here, Lynn.
Right.
When you pull it out, you can go ahead and again we're going to press, and it's going to tell you it likes to press. If you press it out like this with it pressing down with that 1/4 square kind of pointing down towards the bottom of that parallelogram pair, that when you turn it over is going to give you a nice flat look right there. And then what we'd need to do would be the easy part of the square. We're going to go in, put more of those white half square triangles on either side, and you can see that it's going to line up just perfectly along the edge of that parallelogram right there. And when we sew it up, we're going to have our nice 1/4 square of our block.
Now I like to cut these little dog ears off before I put them.
I do too.
Okay.
Now we're a little spoiled because with a regular triangle, those are cut off for you with our AccuQuilt dies. With the parallelogram, you do have that tip, so you do need to go back, do that extra stitch. Just take that extra bulk out of your seam.
Well, thank you for showing us how to do that. That is definitely an advanced technique, and it's great to know, and another useful way to use your Qube.
And again, practice makes perfect. So we don't always like to do it, but really doing a sample block is going to save you in the end.
All right, so make sure to check out the other 2 segments with the other 2 blocks so that now you have all of the instruction for this great Hugs and Kisses baby quilt.
That's right.
And you can find the pattern on AccuQuilt.com.
You can find more inspiration there as well. We also have our Facebook page, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest.
Right. So at AccuQuilt, we help you cut time
so you can quilt more.